Right, guys, moving on to education and leisure now. So remember, key topic three, um, really important for social life in Elizabethan England. Right, so a little bit of a graphic on which groups went to which schools. Please take note of it. You need to know the distinction of social class. So, noble boys, private tutoring, noble household, university. Notice the difference between gender as well. So noble girls, private tutor, then noble household until mid-teens. Middle class girls, dame schools, middle class boys, petty schools, grammar schools, university apprentice. Please take note of that. Right, so the education, it was provided for the children of the wealthy. Literacy rates would increase during this period. Remember, schooling began in the home and then continued through these different types of schools, petty schools, grammar schools, and universities. Great resources on BBC Bitesize for these guys, please use it. The main form, though, is the petty schools, which provides education from the age of 5. The education, the grammar schools are quite formal, lessons concentrating on reading and writing. Remember also this from our medicine through time topic, this idea of humanism, which is moving away from the religious aspect and more about increasing knowledge for yourself. So what happens at petty schools? So you'd have dame schools for girls, remember, as well, that offered education to children. Schools are run by a local housewife, derives from the name Dame School. In these schools, the curriculum covering basics of the English language. Petty schools / dame schools taught to children about standards and accepting behaviour. And they're not free to attend, but it is a low fee. So again, just make a note of who's being educated. Also think about the merchant classes, the guild systems that are being set up here, where merchants would want their children to get an apprenticeship maybe, or in a skill. So be aware of that. Right, what happens in grammar schools? Very strict. Schools are known to have started at 6, close at 5. Also known that in many grammar schools, pupils are expected to speak Latin rather than English. Punishments for lateness, so very extreme. Just an example of curriculum. You can pause it and have a look at these. Right, onto leisure itself. So now you've got jousting. Jousting really is the sport for rich nobles, knights, because you need to have a horse, you need to have armor, you need to have a lance, and you need to have squires to help you. So upper classes would play, a nobleman would joust. It's not for the peasantry, this. Right, fencing again, extremely popular. More for the nobles. You'll need to pay for the sword, your armor. Again, a popular sport to increase your combat prowess. Football, so quite an important one. Very early days of football, remember, was not like we have it today. It's a low class game for men, so keep that in mind. We're thinking about society here. So a low class game for men. It's violent. Men could be killed in matches. It would last for hours. The aim of the game is similar to today, to get the ball into the other's goal. However, the goals were all kinds of different sizes. There wasn't a one set size. There were no rules against picking up the ball and running with it. So, similar to Gaelic football there. Number of players, there's no rules to that. There was no rules against tripping up opposition's team or the size of the pitch. So the pitch could be huge. So it's for the lower class man, this one. Okay, bear baiting. So you can link this to other kind of violent sports involving animals. Really important for spectators. So this would people would come and watch these animals, consider it entertainment, and large sums of money would be gambled. So this is why it was so important. So during the bear baiting, a bear would be chained to the post, as you can see in the picture there, and dogs would be unleashed against it. The bear's teeth would be broken beforehand, so they couldn't bite the dogs, because obviously the dog owners don't want to lose their prized assets. But many were still killed because the bear could like lash out the claws and pin them. They did try not to kill the bear because they were really expensive, but it could sometimes happen. It was really popular in Elizabethan England. There were arenas for it. All classes enjoyed watching them, okay, including the Queen. So very popular pastime. Most towns even had a bull ring, because bulls were not really rare or expensive, so the fight for a bull would be to death. Yeah, again, similar thing. Dogs would be set upon a bull. Bulls couldn't use their horns. The bull would use its horns to fight them off, sometimes sending the dogs flying. Yeah, just another example of bear baiting here. Yeah, a few nasty pictures. It's an example of the bullfighting, and you've got one of the lads' favourites, which is cockfighting. So again, cockerels, really aggressive birds. If you ever live near a farm or come across a farm, cockerels can be quite aggressive. They would wear metal spurs. So if you can see in the left-hand side there, a metal spur, like a spike, would be attached to the cockerel, and it would just lash at each other. They would use their beaks as well. Many places, even small towns, they would have arenas built for cockfighting. Or again, all classes enjoyed it, and huge bets would be used. Baiting and cockfighting were not approved by all Elizabethans. Remember, Puritans didn't like them. They didn't like much. They didn't like fun, Puritans, but they didn't like them because they felt animals were being mistreated. But the main reason, rewind on that. The Puritans didn't really care about the animals being mistreated. However, Puritans, they disapproved because the fights were usually on Sundays, which they considered a holy day. So just, again, bear that in mind. Right, literature. Great literature was in this period. Canterbury Tales, Geoffrey Chaucer. If you ever try and read it today, it's a tricky read because of the prose used back then. But it were hugely popular subjects. The Knight's Tale being a famous one. Medieval works. This would often be read out. It's creative writing which inspired poetry and plays. Most educated people would write poetry, and it would also be used in the theatre, remember. Just be aware that only the upper classes would be reading and writing. Right, in the theatre, which you might know from your English lessons with covering Shakespeare, this was really developed as a result of Protestantism. It influenced much of Elizabethan life. There were mystery plays, things like that. Some Protestants believed that the centuries-old plays were another way for the Catholic Church to control interpretation of the Bible, so newer plays were brought in. Again, there were a lot more secular plays. That means non-religious plays were becoming more popular during the Protestant era. They were seen as more exciting than the older religious plays that used Bible stories. The endings weren't already known, so people liked that kind of surprise to it. Yeah, the demand for theatre rocketed during this period. You've got the theatre companies that are growing. They're establishing and funded by members of the nobility. So the Earl of Leicester, Robert Dudley, he had his own company called Leicester's Men, and then Elizabeth even established in the Queen's Men. So popularity plays really led to these purpose-built theatres that were being constructed. Plays would be done in the courtyard. They had high galleries surrounding them so people could watch. And many were built in London. The first purpose-built theatre was the Red Lion in Whitechapel, constructed in 1567. Others included the Rose in 1587, not far from where the modern reconstruction of Shakespeare Globe is. Now, this bit's key. Theatre was popular for all classes. Well-known performers always attracted large audiences. However, only men were allowed to act. Women's parts were normally taken by boys. Sometimes there were queues of 2,000 people waiting to see a performance. Poor people could pay 1 penny to stand in the pit in front of the stage. The pit was basically an area in a theatre at the base of the stage. Seats were expensive, so again, think about how it's different in our society. In their society, difference between rich and poor. So the most expensive places to sit were directly above the stage. But this was not where the best view of the action actually was. But the important thing was to be sitting there by the rest of the audience. So you normally stand if you're poor, if you couldn't afford a seat. And you've got music and dancing. Again, Elizabethans, very passionate. Instruments were not too different from those we have today. There were lutes, which is similar to a guitar, spinets, and harps. Harpsichords. You'll have to Google that, but they're similar to pianos. They're expensive instruments and would be found in noble and upper class households. You had bagpipes and fiddles that were popular with the lower classes. So again, think about our societal differences there. Listening to music performances was hugely popular. Wealthy families would employ their own musicians to play during meals and feasts. The only men could be paid musicians. Lower classes would listen to music at fairs, markets, or on public occasions. There was music in church, taverns, barber shops, and streets. Books of popular songs could even be bought. New music was being composed to accompany the new secular plays in the theatre. It contributed to new music being composed. Dancing was really popular, and upper and lower classes did not dance together. It did bring kind of men and women together. So that's our education and leisure. Please again use this alongside your own revision.